The night that changed everything began like any other ordinary evening, but there was something in the air, a kind of heavy stillness that seemed to press down on my chest as the shadows stretched long across my porch. I remember the street lamps flickering faintly outside, casting their pale yellow glow on the bare branches of the trees, making them sway like restless spirits in the cold Atlanta wind. My old house, standing on the outskirts of the city, carried with it years of memories, some warm, some heavy, and as I rocked gently on the porch chair waiting for Danielle and Lily, I could feel something unsettling drawing near, though I couldn't yet name it. Danielle arrived later than usual, her car pulling into the driveway with a shudder of brakes that echoed through the stillness. I rose to greet them, expecting the usual routine, but the moment I saw her step out, I knew something was different. She stood there at the threshold, her shoulders rigid, her hands gripping her purse straps so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her eyes darted from side to side, scanning the shadows of the alley as if she expected someone to leap out. This wasn't the same daughter-in-law I had once welcomed into my family with open arms. She was restless, trembling, as though she carried a secret too heavy for her fragile frame. Beside her stood Lily, my 5-year-old granddaughter, clutching her beloved teddy bear, Barnaby, to her chest. Her little school clothes were wrinkled, and her hair was tangled as if she hadn't been tended to all day. When her eyes lifted to meet mine, I saw no sparkle, only a deep unease that pierced my heart. My sweet Lily, who once ran into my arms laughing, now stood there silently, her small body pressed close to her mother's side like a child desperate for protection. Danielle's voice wavered when she finally spoke. "You don't mind keeping her tonight, do you?" she asked, though it was the third time she repeated the question, and I had already said yes with a smile to reassure her. But she didn't seem comforted. She leaned down, whispering something into Lily's ear that I barely caught. "Sleep well, my love. I'll come get you tomorrow." When she straightened and her eyes met mine, something inside me froze. Her gaze lingered just a second too long, filled with something I couldn't decipher, warning, maybe, or desperation. Then she turned, walking briskly into the night, her figure swallowed by the shadows until she was gone. The silence left behind was almost suffocating. I held Lily's hand gently and led her inside, trying to shake the unease that Danielle's presence had left behind. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of chicken noodle soup I had prepared earlier, hoping to make Lily feel at home. I set a steaming bowl in front of her, smiling as warmly as I could. "Have some, sweet girl. I made it just for you." But she barely lifted the spoon. She sat there staring into the broth, her small hands gripping Barnaby tighter, her voice a whisper. "I'm not hungry, Grandma." The words were soft, but they cut deep. This was not the lively child who once chattered endlessly about her favorite cartoons or her new friends at school. This Lily seemed smaller, dimmer, as though some invisible weight pressed down on her tiny shoulders. I sat beside her that evening, trying to coax her into laughter, putting on cartoons that once made her giggle until tears ran down her cheeks. But she didn't laugh. She didn't even watch. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, blank and distant, as though her mind had wandered far away into a place I could not reach. That night, I prepared the old daybed next to mine, the same little room that still held the rocking chair I had once used for her father, Alex, when he was a baby. Lily curled up under the quilt, Barnaby clutched tightly against her chest, her small back turned toward me. In the silence, I heard her sigh, not the light sigh of a child drifting into dreams, but a heavy, weary sigh, the kind that belongs to someone who has seen too much. It reminded me of my own sleepless nights after losing Alex, when all I had for company was the painful rhythm of my own heart. I wanted to pull her into my arms, to tell her she was safe, that Grandma would always be here. But something in the way she clung to her bear, the way she refused to turn toward me, told me she wasn't ready to let me in. So I lay still, watching the shadows move along the walls, praying silently that her sleep would be peaceful. But close to midnight, I was startled awake by soft sobs. Lily's small body trembled in her sleep, her lips moving, her voice weak and broken. "Grandma, I'm so scared. Don't leave me." I reached over, gently resting my hand on her shoulder. She didn't wake, only whimpered, her brow furrowed, her tiny fists tightening around Barnaby as though he were her lifeline. I stroked her tangled hair, whispering, "I'm here, my love. I won't go anywhere." But even as I whispered, a cold worry crept through me, sharp as winter air. Something was wrong, something bigger than what I could see. The next morning, sunlight crept in through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the floorboards. I rose early, determined to fill the house with warmth. Eggs sizzled in the pan, toast browned, and the sweet scent of cocoa filled the kitchen. I wanted Lily to wake up and remember what safety tasted like, to find comfort in the ordinary rituals of childhood. When she appeared, her hair was matted, her eyes swollen and red as if she had cried through the night. She clutched Barnaby as though her life depended on it. I smiled gently, hiding my unease. "Did you sleep well, sweetheart?" I asked, but she only lowered her head, not answering. I placed her breakfast in front of her, trying to sound cheerful. "I made scrambled eggs and hot cocoa, just like your daddy used to love." She sat quietly, her little hands gripping the spoon, but she didn't eat right away. And then, in a voice so soft I almost thought I imagined it, she whispered, "Grandma. Mommy told me I can't tell you what I saw at home." The spatula slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the kitchen floor. My heart froze. I turned to her slowly, kneeling so I could see her face. "Sweetheart. Don't be afraid. You can tell Grandma. What did you see?" Her lips trembled, her wide eyes filling with tears. She hesitated, torn between fear and the desperate need to speak. Finally, her small voice broke through, each word carving into me like a blade. "There's a little girl locked in the basement. She cries all the time. She says her hands hurt so much." The world seemed to stop. The spoon still lay on the floor, the glass of milk on the table toppled, spreading slowly across the wood, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Lily's words echoed inside me, shaking me to my core. She burst into tears then, flinging herself into my arms, her little body trembling like a frightened bird caught in a storm. I held her tight, stroking her hair, whispering that she was safe, though inside me, terror was mounting like a flood. Could it be true? Could there really be another child, hidden and suffering in Danielle's house? Her sobs echoed in my ears, and for the first time, I understood that my world already scarred by loss was about to plunge into a darkness I could never have imagined. I sat there on the kitchen floor with Lily in my arms, her sobs muffled against my shoulder, and I felt the weight of her words press down on me with a force I could barely endure. A little girl locked in the basement. It was a sentence that no grandmother should ever have to hear. For a long while I simply held her, rocking her gently, whispering the same soft assurances I once used to calm my son, Alex, when he was small. But inside, my thoughts were unraveling, racing back through the years, searching desperately for clues, for answers that might explain how we had come to this terrifying moment. There was a time when my home was full of light. I can still see Alex walking through the front door after a long day at the construction site, his boots leaving a trail of dust across the floor, his laughter filling every corner of the house. He was strong, bright, the kind of man whose smile could lift the heaviest of days. He would swing Lily up onto his shoulders, her little arms reaching high as though she could touch the sky itself, and her laughter, oh, that laughter was the purest sound I had ever heard. Danielle was different then too, before tragedy hollowed her out. She was radiant, her presence as warm as the sunlight spilling through my kitchen windows. Together, she and I used to cook family dinners, our hands busy while our voices carried the easy rhythm of companionship. She would ask me, with that girlish excitement, if I thought Alex would like what we made. I used to tease her that if he didn't, I'd scold him myself. Those were the days when love and laughter seemed endless, and I allowed myself to believe that nothing could ever fracture what we had. But fate is cruel. The night the phone rang, I woke to the sound of my heart breaking before the words were even spoken. Alex's car had gone off the road. A slick stretch of asphalt, a plunge into darkness, and just like that, my son, my anchor, my sunshine was gone. I remember clutching Lily, who was barely 2 years old, as she asked me with innocent clarity where her daddy was. I told her he was in a faraway place, watching over her, though the truth was I didn't know how I would go on myself. Danielle stood apart from me at the funeral, her eyes vacant, her body present but her spirit already drifting somewhere unreachable. It was as though the light in her had been extinguished the same night Alex's car crashed into that ravine. After that, the house grew quiet. Danielle withdrew from me, her visits becoming fewer, her words colder. She moved into another neighborhood, taking Lily with her, telling me she needed a fresh start. I told myself not to blame her, that grief breaks people in different ways. But each time I handed Lily back after a weekend together, a piece of me felt torn away. And now, years later, here I was listening to Lily's fragile whisper about a girl locked in a basement, and the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The withdrawn looks, the restless nights, the way she clung to Barnaby as if he were her only safe place in the world. Something had been festering in the shadows of Danielle's life, and Lily had seen it. I tried to keep my voice calm for her sake. "It's all right, sweetheart. You were very brave to tell me. Grandma will take care of everything." But even as I said the words, a storm was raging inside me. Later that day, I walked Lily to school, her tiny hand cold in mine. She was unusually quiet, staring at the ground as though afraid her thoughts might slip out if she looked me in the eye. I tried to lighten the mood, asking her what she might learn that day, but she only shook her head. The silence between us was heavy, and it broke me to realize that my little girl was carrying burdens far too great for her age. When we reached the school, I lingered, waiting for Miss Jenkins, her teacher. She was a kind woman with sharp, attentive eyes, the sort of teacher who noticed when something wasn't right. In a low voice, I told her what Lily had whispered to me that morning. I felt my throat tighten as I spoke the words aloud. "A little girl locked in the basement." Miss Jenkins listened without interruption, her brow furrowing deeper with each detail. When I finished, she folded her hands tightly together, choosing her words with care. "Mrs. Granderson, I've noticed changes in Lily too. She startles easily. She drifts away in class. And in art she's been drawing pictures that unsettle me. Always a child alone in a dark room, lines behind her like prison bars." Her words struck me like a knife. The drawings confirmed the terror Lily had voiced. I managed a trembling thank you, my legs weak as I turned to leave. As I walked home, the images haunted me, Lily's frightened eyes, the sketches of a child behind bars, and the possibility that somewhere, in Danielle's basement, another little girl cried in the dark. That afternoon, I sat on my porch, staring at the red blossoms of the crepe myrtles trembling in the wind, when Mr. Sterling, my elderly neighbor, stopped by. He leaned on his cane, his keen eyes narrowing as he studied my face. "Something's wrong, Clara," he said in that grave, no-nonsense tone of his. I hesitated, torn between silence and the desperate need to share the burden. Finally, I told him part of it, that Lily had spoken of another little girl at Danielle's house. His expression darkened. "I didn't want to say anything," he murmured, lowering his voice, "but one night last week, I saw Danielle come home very late, past midnight. She had a little girl with her. Not Lily. This child was smaller, with short hair. And I heard crying. I thought maybe it was Lily at first, but now I'm not so sure." My heart thundered in my chest. Mr. Sterling's words fit too perfectly with Lily's whisper. It was no longer just a child's nightmare. Something real was happening. I didn't wait. The next morning, I took the bus to the precinct, clutching my coat to steady my trembling hands. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and bitter coffee, the kind of air that makes your lungs ache. I sat across from Commander Davis, his tired eyes fixed on me as I told him everything. Lily's whisper. The drawings. Mr. Sterling's testimony. My voice cracked, but I pressed on, every word heavy with desperation. "Sir, my granddaughter isn't lying. Please believe me. If there's a child in danger, every hour matters." He listened, drumming his fingers on the desk, and when I finished, he shook his head slowly. "I understand your concern, Mrs. Granderson. But without concrete evidence, we can't obtain a search warrant. All we have are the words of a child and the suspicions of a neighbor." His words hit me like cold water. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. What if Lily is right? What if there really is a child locked in that basement, and we do nothing? My voice cracked, but he only repeated, "File the report, and wait. Wait." As if time weren't bleeding through our fingers, as if a child's cries in the dark could be put on hold. I left the precinct with my legs trembling beneath me, my heart hollow. At the market that afternoon, whispers followed me through the stalls. I caught the words like barbs in the air. "Poor old Clara, she's losing her mind." Accusing her own daughter-in-law? Must be grief driving her mad. I kept my head down, clutching the basket tight, but each whisper cut deeper than the last. The days that followed blurred together, heavy with doubt and whispers that clung to me like a second skin. Wherever I went, I felt the eyes of neighbors on me, their pity thinly veiled, their suspicion sharper than knives. Danielle's lies had taken root quickly, painting me as an old woman driven mad by loneliness, weaving stories just to hold on to her granddaughter. And perhaps the cruelest part was that a small piece of me began to wonder, was grief twisting my mind, making me see shadows where there were none? But then I would remember Lily's eyes. The way her small hands clutched Barnaby. The tremor in her voice when she whispered of the girl in the basement. Children don't invent pain like that. No, the truth lived in her eyes, and I knew I had to keep fighting for it, even if the whole world stood against me. One afternoon, as I trimmed the crepe myrtles in my yard to steady my restless heart, I heard footsteps on the gravel. Mr. Sterling appeared at the fence, his old cane tapping the earth. His face was etched with concern, and he motioned me closer, lowering his voice. "Clara," he said, "you need to see this." He pulled an old phone from his pocket, its screen scratched, its battery taped. "My nephew works at the corner store. I asked him to check the security cameras from last week." His hand trembled as he passed the phone to me. "Watch." On the grainy footage, time-stamped past midnight, I saw Danielle. My daughter-in-law, once as familiar to me as my own reflection, now a stranger moving furtively in the dark. She was leading a child into her house. Not Lily. This girl was smaller, her hair tangled, her pajamas torn. She walked with hesitation, as if she were afraid to set foot on the ground. And Danielle, her hand gripped the child's arm too tightly, her face hard, sharp, unrecognizable. I nearly dropped the phone. My knees went weak, and I had to steady myself against the porch rail. It was no longer just whispers, no longer just Lily's trembling confession. Here was proof. Proof that someone's child had been taken into Danielle's house. "Are you sure?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mr. Sterling's eyes, usually calm, now burned with grim certainty. "I saw her that night too. That wasn't Lily. Clara, you have to take this to the police. Don't let them dismiss you again." With trembling hands, I clutched the phone as if it were the last lifeline left to me. That very evening, I returned to the precinct. The same bitter coffee smell, the same dull light, but this time I walked with fire in my steps. I demanded to see Commander Davis and placed the phone before him. "Look," I said, my voice breaking but firm. "This is no delusion. This is real." He watched the clip, his face unreadable, but his hesitation was enough to make me lean forward, nearly begging. "That girl is not from our neighborhood. I have lived there for decades, Commander. I know every child's face. And Lily, my granddaughter, she's terrified." She spoke of a girl locked away, crying, hurt. "Please, you must believe me." Perhaps it was the rawness in my voice, or perhaps the sight of that frail child on the screen shifted something in him. He called for an officer, ordered them to cross-check with missing persons reports. The room was silent except for the rapid clacking of keys. Then the young officer turned, his face pale. "Commander," he said, "the child matches the description of Chloe Vance. 5 years old. Reported missing 2 weeks ago in the next county. Chloe. A name. A little girl who wasn't just a shadow in Lily's whisper anymore, but flesh and blood, stolen from her parents' arms." The weight of it hit me so hard I thought I might collapse. Commander Davis stood, his voice clipped with urgency now. "Request a search warrant. Immediate execution." At last, the storm had shifted. That night, I barely slept. I sat by Alex's photograph, the soft light of the lamp casting shadows over his smiling face. "Son," I whispered, clutching my hands together, "help me be strong. Help me protect them." Rain drummed on the roof, each drop like a war drum leading me into battle. By dawn, the patrol cars had arrived. Their flashing lights painted the gray morning with harsh colors. Commander Davis met me outside, his face stern, unreadable. "It's time," he said. My heart pounded as I climbed into the car, clutching the small bag where I had placed Lily's drawings, as though they might serve as talismans of truth. Danielle's house loomed ahead, its windows dark, its yard silent. The crepe myrtles there too had dropped their petals, red against the wet earth, as if nature itself had been bleeding. Officers surrounded the house. The knock on the door was sharp, official. When it opened, Danielle stood there, her face blanching with shock before twisting into fury. "What is this?" She spat, her voice sharp as glass. Commander Davis presented the warrant. We're here to conduct a lawful search. Her eyes snapped to mine, blazing with hatred. You did this, she hissed. You want to destroy me. You want to take Lily from me. I didn't answer. My throat was tight with sorrow. Ethan, her brother, stormed from the back room, shouting, his heavy frame filling the doorway. Officers restrained him as he bellowed about lies and conspiracies. Through the chaos, I saw Lily huddled in the corner of the living room, Barnaby pressed against her chest, her eyes swollen from crying. My heart ached to run to her, to gather her up in my arms, but Danielle's glare pinned me where I stood. The search moved quickly through the house, boots echoing on tile, drawers opening and closing, each sound sharp as gunfire in the tense silence. And then they reached the basement door. A small, rusted iron thing at the end of the hall. The moment the officer's hand touched it, Danielle's composure shattered. She lunged forward, arms spread, blocking the way, her voice frantic. No. You can't go down there. It's just storage. There's nothing there. Her panic was answer enough. Officers pulled her back as the key turned. The door creaked open, releasing a rush of stale, damp air. And from the darkness below came the sound that silenced everyone, the trembling, desperate cry of a child. My breath caught in my chest. The officer's flashlight cut through the gloom, sweeping over stained walls, broken boxes, and then landing on a small figure curled in the corner. A girl. Her hair tangled, her pajamas torn, her face pale and streaked with dirt. Her arm was bound in a filthy rag. Her eyes, wide with terror, blinked against the sudden light. Chloe, I whispered, though my voice barely carried. My knees buckled, and I clung to the porch rail to keep from falling. An officer lifted her gently into his arms, cradling her fragile body as if she might break. She clung to him with desperate strength, whimpering. Call EMS. Someone shouted. Around us, neighbors who had gathered at the sound of sirens gasped, murmured, their voices a wave of shock and shame. Dear God, I heard one whisper. She was telling the truth. But there was no triumph in me. Only sorrow. Sorrow for Chloe, for Lily, for the family that had been twisted into this nightmare. Danielle screamed, her voice raw, clawing at the officers as they cuffed her hands. I didn't hurt her. I was protecting her. You don't understand. Her words rang hollow, unraveling into sobs as they pulled her away. Ethan roared curses, but he too was dragged off, his fury powerless against the cold grip of justice. I turned to Lily then, and she looked at me with those wide, wounded eyes. I opened my arms, and she flew into them, burying her face in my chest. Grandma, she whispered, her voice trembling, is it over now? I held her tighter than I ever had, whispering back, yes, my love. It's over. You're safe. The following days passed in a blur of headlines and flashing cameras. Reporters crowded the street, microphones thrust forward, eager for the story of the grandmother who had been mocked, the child who had whispered truth, the little girl who had been found in the dark. But I had no words for them. I only wanted to hold Lily close, to let her hear the steady beat of my heart and know that it was hers forever. At the hospital, I stood outside the glass as Chloe was reunited with her parents. The Vances clung to their daughter, sobbing into her tangled hair, whispering love as though trying to make up for the stolen days. When they came to me, Mrs. Vance took my hands, her tears warm on her cheeks. We owe you everything, she whispered. You and Lily, you saved her. I shook my head, my voice thick. Lily is the hero. She was brave enough to speak when no one believed her. And in that truth lay the lesson I would never forget, that even the smallest voices, trembling and unsure, can carry the weight to change the world. That night, Lily curled against me in bed, Barnaby tucked between us. She lifted her face, her eyes finally soft again, and asked, Grandma, am I really a hero? I kissed her forehead, tears spilling into her hair. Yes, my love. You are the bravest hero I have ever known. Outside, the night was quiet. The crepe myrtles swayed gently, their petals falling like blessings under the silver light of the moon. I closed my eyes and thought of Alex, of his smile, of the life that had been torn away too soon. And I whispered into the silence, I kept my promise, son. I protected her. I protected them. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt peace. The names and places in this story have been changed to protect those involved, but its truth remains. And now, dear listener, I ask you, if you had been in my place, would you have had the courage to keep pushing forward when no one believed you? Or would you have chosen silence, letting fear and doubt win? Share your thoughts with me, because every story we tell carries a light, and perhaps your words will guide someone else through their own darkness. If this story touched you, I ask that you carry it further, share it, leave your voice in the comments, and join this circle so that no whisper, no small cry for help, is ever ignored again.